That starts with a pretty intense question. Picture this. You're on a plane, and you see it happen. You see a passenger getting talked down to, just totally dismissed and treated like they're less than. So what happens when the passenger you humiliate turns out to be the person who secretly owns the entire airline? Yeah. Suddenly, that whole power dynamic just flips on its head. And that one question, well, it's the key to an incredible story about prejudice, power, and a massive transformation, all taking place at 30,000 feet. So today, we are breaking down the story of Jamal Walters and Sky Elite Airways. And believe me, this story doesn't start in some fancy boardroom. It starts in a first-class seat that turned into a battleground for basic human dignity.
To really get what went down in Seat 2A, we first have to understand the man who was sitting in it. So, who exactly was Jamal Walters?
You know, this was the idea his mother, a public school teacher from the South Bronx, drilled into him. He wasn't born with a silver spoon. He was raised on this one core belief. Knowledge was the one thing, the one type of power that nobody could ever take away from him.
And his rise was, well, it was meteoric, but it was also really quiet. I mean, he goes from being this kid teaching himself how to code on old library computers to founding a tech company that pretty much every major airline depended on. And then, the real power move. He secretly becomes the largest single shareholder in Sky Elite Airways.
So you might be wondering, why is this guy flying incognito, in jeans and a hoodie, when he can afford whatever he wants? For Jamal, it was a fundamental business principle. He truly believed that to understand his own company, he had to experience it just like any other customer. So this wasn't just another flight. It was a test. A field test of his own company's culture.
Now, here's something you absolutely have to understand. What was about to happen on that plane, it wasn't a one-off thing. Not even close. Throughout his entire life, Jamal had faced this relentless pattern of discrimination. He was constantly being judged by how he looked, not by what he'd built. And these experiences, they were going to deeply influence how he chose to handle this.
All right, so let's get to the flight itself. This is the moment where Jamal's quiet little field test ends, and he starts to collect some seriously undeniable evidence.
And look, this wasn't just one bad interaction. It was a step-by-step breakdown of respect. It started right at the check-in counter, just this cold, dismissive attitude. Then, surprise, surprise, he gets randomly selected for extra screening. Once he's on board, the cabin crew just ignores him while serving everyone else around him. And then the final insult. The captain himself pressures Jamal to give up the seat he paid for, basically banishing him to a middle seat in the very last row.
And if that wasn't bad enough, the banker who ended up taking his seat leans over and whispers these 4 little words as he passes by. Know your place. It was just this direct, nasty insult, basically designed to reinforce every prejudice that had followed Jamal his whole life.
But you know, in that moment when he's feeling totally isolated, an ally appeared out of nowhere. Zora Jackson, another passenger who happened to be a former Sky Elite employee. She saw what was happening and confirmed everything he suspected. She told him, this isn't just a few bad apples, it's the culture here. And her firsthand account would end up being absolutely critical.
The flight might have been over, but let me tell you, the real drama was just getting started. It all came to a head right there at the customer service desk in the terminal. Can you believe it? After everything he just went through, this was the official response from the airline. A bureaucratic brush-off. Here, fill out a form, wait 6 to 8 weeks, and oh, here's a $50 voucher for your troubles. A $50 voucher for that level of humiliation. That was the absolute final straw.
The terminal director comes out and gives this polished non-apology, blaming the whole thing on operational reasons. He had no idea, not a clue who he was talking to. And just as he's finishing his little speech, Jamal's assistant arrives. And she's not alone. She brought the company's lawyers with her. And there it is, the line that changed absolutely everything. He just calmly introduces himself, not as some angry passenger, but as their boss, the single largest shareholder in the entire company. You could have heard a pin drop. The room just went completely silent.
40%. Let that number sink in for a second. This wasn't just a small stake. This was a commanding ownership position. With that one sentence, the entire power dynamic in that room didn't just shift, it completely shattered.
The consequences were immediate, and they were decisive. All those excuses about just following orders, they fell on deaf ears. Jamal suspended every single person involved in what happened, right there on the spot. From the flight crew all the way up to the terminal managers. Accountability was going to start right now.
But see, this whole moment, this reckoning, it wasn't just about punishment. It was about rebuilding an entire company from the inside out. This is where Jamal's real mission, his true purpose, began.
He called an emergency board meeting, and he used his own terrible experience as Exhibit A. He unveiled something he called Operation Reset, a massive overhaul of company policy. We're talking a zero-tolerance policy on discrimination, real protections for whistleblowers like Zora, and a totally transparent system for handling every single customer complaint. And the results? Well, they were just stunning. All the critics, they predicted disaster, but the exact opposite happened. Sky Elite transformed. It went from a company with a rotten, toxic culture to one with record-high customer satisfaction. And get this, soaring profits. It turns out, treating people with dignity wasn't just the right thing to do, it was a brilliant business strategy. The real test, though, came 3 months later. Jamal boarded another Sky Elite flight. He sat in the exact same seat, 2A. But this time, everything was different. The service was impeccable, not just for him, but for every single passenger on that plane. The culture, it had actually changed.
And remember that horrible insult, know your place? Well, Jamal took those words and he completely redefined them. His place wasn't at the back of the plane. His place was at the helm, turning a moment of personal humiliation into a powerful blueprint for changing an entire company for the better.
So in the end, this story about Jamal Walters, it's not really just about one guy on one flight. It's a challenge, really, for all of us. When we see injustice, whether it's big or small, do we just look away? Or do we find the courage to stand up and, like Jamal, become the person who actually changes the system?